good look at that video. Protesters in Athens, driven by rage, fear, tear gassed, beaten, bloodied in the streets for rejecting austerity measures aimed at pulling the country out of debt. Follow the money stays all over fear and loathing in America, and if you think this can't happen here, you better think again. I'm going to go to my good friend Peter Schiff. What about it, Peter? It's all about keeping Greece from being buried in debt. We're in way deeper debt than a country like Greece is.
Oh, look, it's not a question of when, if, it's a question of when. It's going to happen here. It's going to be relatively soon. We're in the same position. We've made promises that we can't keep. And the reason people in Greece are rioting is because the government is coming forward and saying, well, we can't give you everything we promised. Well, the same situation is here. We're broke. We can't keep our promises. We can't make all the Social Security payments we promised. We can't give all the government retirees the pensions we promised. We can't pay back all of our creditors the money we borrowed. It's impossible because we can't get the revenues from the taxpayers. So we're either going to have the austerity and default and renege, or we're going to have runaway inflation. But either way, there's going to be lots of riots and protests as the economy crumbles in the United States.
Hang in there, Peter, and also Nancy. I want to go to Wayne. What about it, Wayne? Do you agree with Peter that we could be the next? Look this way: if we're not, as a country, the next Greece, California could be the next Greece.
Well, there's something to say to that. It's the seventh largest economy in the world, as you know, in California. Yes, ultimately, that's right. If we continue in this, yeah, you can't just continue to borrow money and not pay it back. One of the things he touched on, which is really interesting, and it could happen even before and presage that, is the fact that you have all these public employee pension plans that are defined benefit plans, not defined contribution plans. A lot of people don't understand that. The defined benefit plan, you're dead. They are way big different. They are so far under financed right now that it's
defined benefit means that we know exactly what we're going to owe them for as long as they live, and defined contribution means, hey, it depends how much you put in.
Correct.
It tells you how much
I'm going to get out as opposed to putting in.
It's very easy.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Tuesday, February 8th, 2011, and I'm Darko. Welcome everyone to part 2 of this economic news bulletin. We saw that video there with Peter Schiff. Always interested in what he has to say. Let's see here, we finished off with this pop quiz. Oh yeah, I have to plug my own website, www.ggnonline.com. That's www.ggnonline.com. You got 1 day left to vote on that poll about the political upheaval in Egypt. So, without further ado, let's continue with this Business Insider article, Pop Quiz, how much has Safeway hiked food prices just since November? Says, just kidding, there's not really any food inflation in America. JP Morgan's Charles Grom reports. And I don't know if I agree with that, but hey, says Safeway is once again on the price investment cycle, taking down 3.4% from November to January 2011. Specifically, the grocer's average prices came at $3.71 at a total basket of $114 versus $3.84 and $118 respectively in our last study. Okay, as previously mentioned, Safeway and Walmart were the only 2 retailers in our study to lower prices in 3 out of the 4 categories we track. To this point, the grocer delivered a slight 0.1% decrease in produce sales and 3.3% reduction in meat and a 0.2% drop in grocery prices. Similar to the other retailers in our study, dairy prices at Safeway increased up 8% in January. Wow. All told, relative to January 10. And let me just say, I noticed that even in our store here in Northwest Indiana, we used to have, basically it's a wholesaler, but it's a centralized distributor called Central Foods. And they basically supply most of the Chicago area and Northwest Indiana. And a lot of the milk comes from them, Centrella. And it was kind of a knockoff brand. It wasn't like Dean's or something that was a name brand. And that actually increased the off-brand Centrella. And that increased. And then so now the store, I know because I used to work there at the dairy department, they replaced it with some off-brand that has all the hormones and antibiotics. That's why I liked the other milk, because the knockoff brand was, it was reasonable. It was about $2 usually, and around $2, $2.30, and they'd have a lot of sales, and they didn't have the growth hormones or antibiotics. But then they brought in this, cheap crap, and it has all that crap in there. So they're doing that for a reason, because people are feeling the pinch. It says, turning to observations, the store was running a wine special, 30% off a case. Anyways, you can check this. There's a lot of stuff in here that you can check. It basically goes in there and talks about how most of them had gone up. So anyways, let's check this out. 5 simple ways to prepare for the coming food crisis. It says recently there has been an incredible flurry of news reporting about food shortages and the pending global food crisis. Everyone who looks at the indicators would agree that this crisis is only likely to worsen. It is estimated that the Australia floods could alone cause a 30% jump in food prices. Although the average shopper already can feel the food inflation, it is difficult to recognize the severity of the looming food shortages. After all, there are still 15 types of colorfully boxed Cheerios packing the aisles, which gives the illusion of abundance. So I'll finish off with this paragraph. You can go in there and check this out. This is from LouRockwell.com. The truth is that we're headed for a large food production shortfall, manipulated or not. While middle-class food demand grows massively in the developing world, for decades, the world's agricultural community produced more than enough food to feed the planet, yet some now believe we are reaching peak food production levels. In turn, other experts believe the food bubble is about to burst, and not even the biotech companies can save us. So here we go. Cost of feeding the world's poor leaps. The cost of feeding millions of starving people increased markedly in 2010 as rising grain prices pushed up the cost of staple foods. And remember, if the grain prices go up and all that, the meat prices go up. Rising food prices may not signal new crisis. Oh, so everything's okay. As food prices rose for the 7th month in a row, January contributing to recent popular unrest in Middle East, see they're attributing to that, and a spike in commodities purchases by developing countries last week. Some analysts are quick to make comparisons to the dry years of 07 and 08, but others warn against panic and oversimplified predictions of an impending food crisis, which contribute to price volatility. So remember what this article is just saying. Prepare. So go in there and read that article. Don't listen to this propaganda crap. You know, I don't believe in any of this. That everything's going to be hunky dory. I don't. I hope that it's good. For my sake, I'm not living on a fixed income here, so I don't have a lot of money to spend on all organic food or stockpile massive amounts of, basically storable food, like from eFoods Direct. I just got to do what I can do, and I recommend you to do the same thing. Don't believe what the mainstream media is telling you that, oh, don't worry, like in that first video, that all the prices are going to be fine, the food prices, and then you have, who is that, Jim Rogers or whoever it was, saying, I have to disagree with you, dude. The supply is low. Then you have all these weather problems, and and then you have Ben Bernanke with QE2, and I showed a chart of that recently, and showed a correlation between the quantitative easing that the Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke was calling for, and they carried out, and then the rising food prices. Surviving Mao's Great Famine. You can go in there and read this. This is kind of a feature article, but a pretty sad story. And talking about the Great Leap Forward. In 1958, Communist Party leader Mao Zedong instigated his Great Leap Forward, which he said would propel China's agricultural and industrial output ahead of the developed world. And they did all kinds of things like telling these farmers what to do, all ridiculous basically measures that the state was forcing them to do, and a lot of people starved to death. And organized into communes, peasant communities across China were ordered by local cadres to hand over all of their food to the authorities. And finishing it off here, it says that an estimated 45 million people died in what is mankind's worst man-made disaster. And I don't think it was a disaster. This was a full-on eugenics plan, guys. It was a success for the elites. At least 2.5 million people during this period were tortured to death or executed. And he's talking about this, so they bring out the food, and the officials would check it, and they said nobody dared resist the orders because the party had already killed a lot of people, and everyone was scared. They did this all across the country to maintain face. The Great Leap Forward, China exported food overseas during the worst years of the famine. Wow. It says here, bond market flashes inflation warning. Jump in the U.S. Treasury yield signals market fear that Fed is behind the curve on prices. Then we're going to keep flying here forward. Premium on bond yields lowest since August of 2007. Michigan prepares for a tsunami of muni financial crisis. Yeah, Detroit, it's mostly coming from Detroit. Here we go. States turn down federal money for jobless benefits despite record levels of long-term unemployment. Some states are choosing to walk away from a total of $1 billion in federal jobless benefits. So they just don't want money. They don't care about their constituents. No, I think there's more to it than that. Obama to seek interest rate relief for state unemployment plans. Lou says job openings in U.S. decreased to 3-month low. Says here, find a job. Good luck in this economy. 10 reasons why the latest unemployment numbers are no reason to. I'm not going to read all 10 because of time time's sake, but I'll go through the first three. According to CNBC, economists were expecting the U.S. economy to add 145,000 jobs in January. Obviously, the 36,000 figure was a huge disappointment. Number two, approximately 150 jobs needed to be added to the economy each month just to keep up with population growth. Said the government jobs report also indicated that 504,000 Americans dropped out of the labor force in January. And it says that may make the unemployment numbers look better, but the truth is the vast majority of those 500,000 Americans still need incomes and still need jobs. That's right, it kicked off on unemployment benefits, but they still don't have a job. So just because they say, oh, the unemployment rate, that's because those people have to file for unemployment benefits. And then, of course, when they're kicked off and they're let go from the benefits, oh, they're all automatically they're employed now. No, they're not. They're still unemployed. Why could it be? Why it could easily be another 7 years before we're back to old employment levels? It says, and many of the experts are wrong, and the U.S. employment recovery isn't about to pick up. Then we're in for an extremely long slog to get back to pre-recession levels, according to the San Francisco Fed, and says that if job growth performs at its post-recession peak, we'll be back to 2008's jobs level by 2013. All right, guys. I'm going to listen to Bernanke, who says it's going to be a good 5 years before the jobs come back. Unemployment fix could hurt businesses and economy. Keep moving here. Home affordability returns to pre-bubble levels. So there you go. U.S. grapples with rising homelessness. Then we have huge debts loom over British poor. Lisbon subway workers on strike. Again, the UK government should rethink cuts and raise pension age. So, I don't know about that. The death of pension, 5 emerging trends that will affect us all. The actual end of pensions. Number 2, a shrinking government workforce. U.S. gasoline consumption has peaked. Housing rebound for the Sun states. Weaker dollar revives the Rust Belt. So then we have here German factory orders declined in December after surge. And then we'll move on to this. Chrysler CEO apologizes for description of bailouts. The CEO apologized Saturday for the way he described the interest rates the U.S. and Canadian governments are charging on bailouts his company received in 2008 and 2009, and he said that they were a thorn in his side and said that refinancing the 2 loans would mean no longer having to explain the shyster rates. So, and of course, like I said, as corporatism, I've said that in many videos, those type corporations, they basically exist only because of government. They would have went under because of inefficiency or insolvency, but they basically are on lifeline, and that's you, the taxpayer. Airline, and then they gripe about it. Airline losses. Oh, and then they get they're getting the most pay raises they've ever gotten in history, right? Airline losses may top $600 million on record U.S. cancellations. Berkshire Hathaway to buy rest of Wesco. That's a pretty big deal. He's buying out Warren Buffett's buying out the remaining shares. Gore's investment firm set to start $500 million Asian fund. And then we have Bank of America to pay $410 million to settle overdraft manipulation claims. So how about that? Then we have steelmaker ArcelorMittal, I always have a problem pronouncing that, posts $780 million loss. When it comes to paychecks, Wall Street's law of gravity is back in full force. What goes down must come up. Finishing up in 2010, total compensation and benefits at publicly traded Wall Street banks and securities firms hit a record of $135 billion, according to analysis by the Wall Street Journal. Bernanke urges Congress to reduce deficit. Then we have Bernanke bets commodities won't fan inflation concern. Fed should rethink stimulus given strong growth. Oh, is that right? So they're talking about they should seriously consider pulling back the stimulus, not because it can cause it's going to cause inflation and thus higher food prices, an increase in the money supply. No, it's saying because the jobs are back and there's stronger growth. That's why we should end it. Okay. Florida governors cut spending and taxes and budget. Then we have 1/3 of state parks put on potential closing list after Governor Scott calls for budget cuts. States seek prison breaks. They're going to start allowing people in low-level crime be let go and put on probation. So that's good for people who sell vegetation. U.S. plans to inject $53 billion into passenger rail. Typical corporatism, guys. It's taxpayers funding projects, monopolies, corporations. Ex-Security and Exchange Commission employee is charged with insider. This is GGN, and I'm Darko.